If a finger could foretell your fate, then a jeweler could change your destiny with a ring sizer. It can't. What decides your life sits closer than bone and grows faster than nails. It is the quiet power to govern your own judgments. Stay with me until the end, and you'll leave with a simple Stoic experiment you can run for 7 days that will tell you conclusively whether your hand rules you or you rule your hand. Before we begin, a gentle word of clarity, because philosophy should be an instrument of care, not a hammer of certainty. This is educational material, not personal advice. I'll offer principles and practices that have helped many people think and live more clearly. But you are the steward of your own life. If you're making medical, legal, or psychological decisions, consult qualified professionals. Stoicism is a philosophy of agency. It doesn't replace wise counsel, it teaches you how to use it. Now, why does this matter here, now, in a century that measures itself in notifications and learns superstition from algorithms? Because the mind, overloaded, reaches for shortcuts. It wants patterns so badly that it will settle for illusions. It will call luck a law, correlation a cause, and a quirk of anatomy a declaration from the cosmos. The longer ring finger, some say, is a karmic signature, a buried memo about vows made before birth. Others say it's a biological breadcrumb that predicts confidence, risk tolerance, and competence. You don't need me to dismiss either camp with a sneer. Stoicism neither kneels before mystery nor drags it to the stocks. It asks a cooler question, regardless of what your body suggests or what fate assigns. What is up to you? That is the first and last inquiry of a Stoic life. It is the hinge on which every door opens. In the language of the ancient schools, there is a faculty within you called proheresis, the ruling principle, the power of choice. You do not control your reputation, your luck, your breath's number, or the tilt of a finger segment. You do control your judgments about those things. And from those judgments, your intentions, and from those intentions, your actions. Everything else is wind. You, if you choose, can be the rudder. Consider your hand. It may be scarred by old work, narrowed by cold, or blessed with proportions that painters once admired. To a Stoic, such details belong to the class of indifference, not because they don't matter in human life, but because they don't matter to the quality of your character. They are materials. You decide the use. We should talk plainly about the seduction of signs. Human beings have always looked for order. We read tea leaves, thunder, the flight of birds, and now we read data sets. Sometimes we are rewarded. Often we are entertained. The shape of the hand has invited interpretation since antiquity because hands are instruments, expressive and visible. If an old tradition sees a long ring finger and whispers unfinished vows, and a modern paper observes a modest statistical link to prenatal hormones and whispers tendencies, a Stoic nods to both as stories about causes and then returns to the point. What you are responsible for is how you use the stories. The danger is not the story, but your assent to it as destiny. You might object, if there are causes behind me that began before me, am I not simply a puppet with a well-hidden string? This is the oldest argument in the porch, fate and freedom. The Stoics answer with a rope and a dog. The rope is fate, the chain of causes, physical and social, parental and planetary, that brought you here. The dog is you. If you run with the rope's direction, you move freely. If you fight the rope, you are dragged. Freedom, then, is not the power to edit reality's laws, but the power to align your will with them, to meet what is with intentions that are just, measured, and courageous. Your hand? That's a fiber in the rope. Your judgment? That is the dog's direction. Change that, and you change your life's walk. Let me place a human face on this, because philosophy that refuses stories is like a sailboat that refuses wind. We'll follow 3 lives, not biographies of specific people, but composites shaped from many real ones. A preventable downfall, a delayed awakening, and a transformation that held. First, the downfall. Imagine a young trader, I'll call him Aaron, who was told by a friend that his long ring finger marked him as a natural risk-taker, a man wired for boldness and victory. It sounded flattering and scientific enough to pass his skepticism. He began to treat discomfort as proof of destiny, rather than as a cue for deliberation. When markets went his way, he credited his wiring. When they didn't, he said resistance was a test of fate's confidence in him. Meanwhile, he neglected old-fashioned disciplines, position sizing, sleep, honest review. His downfall didn't come because the hand lied. It came because he built a theology of exemption around it. The Stoic mistake wasn't risk. It was surrender of judgment. Courage without caution is not virtue. It is appetite in armor. There is no relish in telling you that he lost more than money. His friendships thinned. His sense of reality shrank to a ticker and a mirror. This was preventable. Replace trading with any craft and the pattern holds. If you treat a trait as a verdict, you will use it as a license. If you treat it as a material, you will use it as a responsibility. A Stoic trader still knows probabilities, sets rules, and runs an evening review. What impression seized me today? Where did I assent too quickly? Where did I resist a clear good? The difference is small in a day and enormous in a decade. Our second story is a delayed awakening. Mina's. She grew up around the language of karma and duty. The idea that her body carried a past contract gave her a sense of meaning, but it also tempted her to refuse legitimate limits. She volunteered beyond exhaustion, forgave harms without boundaries, and labeled every discomfort as a bill coming due. The emotional weather inside her was stormy and strangely proud. She was carrying more than her share, therefore she was good. Then, on a winter evening, she found herself too tired to cross a street before the light changed. This, she realized, was not holiness. It was mismanagement. She found Seneca by accident, then Epictetus by stubbornness. She learned that self-sacrifice untethered from reason is not virtue, but vanity in costume. She learned to ask before every yes, is this within my role, within my strength, within my circle of control? And will it allow me to keep faith with my other obligations? She didn't abandon service. She restructured it. She felt guilty for months, like a person who stops leaning on a cane made of sugar and wonders why standing feels strange. But she stopped making a drama out of tiredness and started making a practice out of clarity. Her awakening was not from superstition to cynicism, but from self-flattery to stewardship. The third story is a transformation that endured. Jonah was a former athlete with a physical confidence that stayed even after the jersey retired. He enjoyed the flattery of the finger myth. You're built for leadership, until a betrayal in his circle rattled him into deeper questions. He wanted to retaliate, to teach a lesson, to force a world back into a shape that felt simple and safe. A coach, older and unpretentious, handed him a battered copy of a Roman emperor's private notes and said, "Read a page before you speak next time." Jonah expected marble and thunder. He found sentences like this: "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." He didn't hear it as a slogan, he heard it as a method. The problem he faced, wounded trust, was also a training ground. He began with the smallest unit of exercise in the school, a pause between impression and assent. He trained it as if he were training a muscle, daily, deliberately, with feedback. Over a year, the reflex to lash out thinned. In its place, a new reflex grew. Investigate your own judgment first. He did not become a doormat. He became a gardener of boundaries and a builder of long games. That is transformation in the Stoic sense. Not lightning, but carpentry. Let's return to the finger, not to mock the question, but to use it correctly. Is there a biological story behind the ratio of one finger to another? Of course there is. Bodies have histories. Does that story dictate your character? No scientific claim of that kind holds water. At most, research points to tiny tendencies within large groups. And even those tendencies are swallowed, redirected, or reversed by education, habit, culture, opportunity, and choice. The Stoic interest in such findings is minimal for a reason. They're descriptive at best, and you live in the normative. Your concern is not, what am I likely to do? But what should I do? The answer will never be printed on your skin. It will be forged by your repeated use of judgment in the face of impressions that claim urgency. This is where many people mishear Stoicism as a denial of feeling. The practice is not to silence emotion, but to translate it. An impression shouts, "Danger," and calls itself fate. A Stoic pauses, not to kill the alarm, but to ask whether the fire is real, whether the exit is blocked, whether the closest door is a balcony. That pause, counted in heartbeats, is the workshop of freedom. It's what Aaron skipped, what Mina learned, and what Jonah trained. How do we train it? Without turning this into a list, I'll guide you through a day, because a day is the right scale for a human mind. Morning. The city has not yet opened its mouth. You choose one line to carry, something brief enough to remember at a red light. Perhaps, I control my judgments, not events. You test drive it in small frictions, the slow elevator, the curt email, the coffee spill. Each friction is a lab where you can observe how swiftly impressions move to conclusions and how gently you can pry them apart. Afternoon. This is where roles test you. You are a parent, a friend, a colleague, a citizen. Each role carries expectations. Not all are wise. Distinguish the role from the costume. Your job may demand speed. Your station may invite pride. Your platform may tempt performance. But your virtue, your fairness, courage, self-control remains portable. You can bring it into any room without asking permission. Evening. You review, not as a prosecutor, not as a defense attorney, but as a craftsman. Where did I choose well? Where did I let the day carry me by the chin? Where was I unkind or unclear? What will I try differently tomorrow? The review is brief. Consistency matters more than length. If nothing else, you go to bed having practiced being your own teacher. If that sounds austere, consider the relief it brings. When you stop outsourcing your identity to traits and rumors of fate, you halt 1,000 little panics. Architecture gives us a good image. A building with a glorious facade and a cracked footing will fail in silence and then all at once. Character is footing. Proportions are facade. Human beings can appreciate both, but only one keeps the structure upright in weather. Sailing gives us another image. We cannot order the wind, but we can set the sail, watch the sky, and choose our tack. You can be grateful for your deck and still blame neither the boat nor the horizon for poor seamanship. Training gives us a third image. You can admire a muscle and still know that capacity without discipline is a liability. In all three images, choice holds the center. Let's open an old question and seat it next to a modern anxiety. The ancients wondered whether the universe is ordered by reason, whether nature is a web of intelligible causes. The modern mind often wonders whether the self is merely a knot of accidents, the anxious child of chemicals, childhood, and chance. Stoicism offers a third response that neither mystifies matter nor despairs of meaning. It says, you are a citizen in a rational cosmos, but your credentials are not printed on your palm. They are proven by how you treat what befalls you. Nature gives you a body, sturdy, fragile, temporary. It gives you a mind, busy, distractible, capable of insight. It gives you time, unpurchasable. And then it hands you a workbench and says, make something worthy. This still leaves room for wonder. If you grew up with talk of vows and prior lives, I won't insult what gave you comfort. I'll invite you to translate it into the currency of practice. What would it mean to live as though you had chosen your responsibilities a second time? What would it mean to adopt a duty as if you had promised it long ago, even if you don't remember? The Stoic answer does not require metaphysics. It requires fidelity. When you show up, not for applause, but because it is right, you are honoring a contract worth more than any myth can offer. When you refuse to let a physical sign exempt you from effort or burden you with guilt, you pay your dues to reality, which is the only creditor that never goes bankrupt. Earlier, I promised a test. Here it is, woven into a story so ordinary that you can run it without telling anyone. For 7 days, treat your ring finger or any other physical marker you carry as a neutral object the way a carpenter treats a hammer. A hammer cannot promise a straight line, only the hand can. So each morning, look at your hand, acknowledge its history without making it a hero or a villain. Then set a small intention you can complete today that expresses a virtue, not a mood. Tell the truth where a polite lie would be easier. Decline a gossip invitation without contempt. Return something you borrowed. Admit a mistake quickly. Give credit specifically. Ask a question before you argue. In the evening, review only one thing. Did I act from my judgment or from a story about my traits? On day 7, decide whether the shape of your finger changed anything without the permission of your mind. If it did, you have discovered magic greater than philosophy. If it didn't, you have discovered freedom within philosophy. While you run the test, notice a second phenomenon. The moment a story relieves you of responsibility, it also steals your power. Aaron learned that the hard way. Mina learned the opposite. Responsibility, rightly understood, restores strength. Jonah learned the third lesson. Strength, rightly trained, becomes gentleness without weakness. Keep these 3 arcs near you like talismans, not of superstition, but of sanity. When you feel the tug toward fatalism, I am this way because, ask what would happen if you replace the because with a despite. I am generous despite a childhood of scarcity. I am patient despite a nervous system trained by alarms. I am fair despite incentives to cheat. The word despite is a sentence of liberation. It tells you that causes are real and character is more real. You may ask where the gods sit in all this. The old Stoics spoke of Zeus, Logos, Providence. You may be a theist, a secularist, or a puzzled traveler between. The practice survives the label. When Marcus Aurelius writes that the universe is either a well-ordered city or a chaos knit together by atoms, he pairs both with the same instruction. Either way, keep your mind straight and your heart ready. Either a divine mind sees you or no mind does. Either way, behave as though your actions matter in the only realm where you can guarantee they do, your own. This is not indifference to the sacred, it is reverence expressed as consistency. Return again to the hand. It's a strong teacher, it knows grip and release. There are things to grasp, a promise, a standard, a craft. There are things to let go, resentment, the fantasy of control over other people's choices, the superstition that anatomy is fate. Practice both motions daily. Grip. Choose a value, articulate it so clearly that a stranger could test it, then bind yourself to it in small acts. Release. When an outcome refuses your command, open your hand, recover your posture, and step again. This is how a Stoic looks composed, not because the world obeys them, but because they do not shatter each time it doesn't. I'll revisit our three companions at their quiet turning points because stories are anchors. Aaron's came not on a trading floor, but at a kitchen sink. He noticed that he was washing a mug as if it had offended him. He laughed, not cruelly, but as a man caught in the act of being unfree. He put the mug down, dried his hands, and wrote 3 lines. I am not my impulses, I am their editor. I will not publish everything I think. He kept trading. He changed his rules. He stopped looking for signs and started looking for skills. His return to profit was less dramatic than his plunge, and so it stuck. Mina's turning point came in a hospital corridor when a nurse placed a hand on her shoulder and said, "You can take a break." Mina heard it as permission from the universe. She took 10 minutes, then she took a weekend, then she learned to decline without apology. Her generosity deepened when it was no longer theatrical. Jonah's moment came on a park bench when he almost composed a message that would have scorched earth and fertilized nothing. He closed the phone and wrote instead, I cannot control another's honor. I can preserve my own. He still felt anger. He used it as a signal to strengthen a boundary rather than as gasoline to light a bridge. What do these have in common? A change of judgment preceding a change of behavior. The hand followed. The finger lengths remained absurdly unchanged. What altered was the story each person told about what those hands were for. If there is a karmic echo worth listening to, perhaps it is this. The best of your ancestors, spiritual, biological, philosophical, handed you disciplines, not destinies. Use them. This is the place to correct a misunderstanding about Stoic serenity. Calm is not the absence of stakes. It is poise under pressure because your scoreboard is internal. You can still aim for excellence in your work, justice in your city, tenderness in your home. You can fight for outcomes like a lion and accept results like a monk. The paradox dissolves when you distinguish what is fully yours from what is never yours. Your effort, your honesty, your restraint, fully yours. The ripple effects, never fully yours. If you confuse the two, you will either become callous or breakable. If you separate them, you will become useful. There is a thought experiment I often propose at this point, a cousin to the 7-day test. Imagine that you wake up tomorrow and notice that your hands have changed in some conspicuous way. Longer here, shorter there. You see it. The world sees it. For 24 hours, you are under the spell of the most convincing superstition you can imagine. How do you behave? Now imagine the same day without any change, but with a private vow to behave as though you alone determine whether you will be truthful, just, and disciplined. Which day produces better actions? Stoicism trains you to live the second day every day. Let me offer a micro summary so we don't get lost in our own currents. The body carries histories. The mind carries responsibilities. Stoicism draws a line between what is descriptive and what is prescriptive and hands the latter to you. If you have a long ring finger, great. Buy a glove that fits. If you have a short one, great. Buy a glove that fits. Either way, lace your life with practices that do not care how your hand is shaped. Begin with the pause between impression and assent. Continue with honest evening review. Add the view from above when your world feels small. Remind yourself that you are a point within a city, within a planet, within a solar system, and that your dignity does not depend on being the largest thing in the picture. Insert voluntary discomfort within your capacities. Take the stairs, skip a luxury, not because suffering purifies, but because comfort seduces, and cultivate friendships that respect your agency. The company of fatalists is contagious. We've kept a loop open since the beginning, and it's time to close it. I said you would learn how to use what your hands cannot give. Here's the answer a Stoic would give, without poetry and without apology. Use your hands to do the work your judgments choose. Use them to write apologies quickly. Use them to hold back a cruel reply. Use them to lift a box for someone who cannot. Use them to sign your name to duties you will keep and to refuse bargains that would sell your integrity cheap. If that sounds homely compared to cosmic charts, remember that the cosmos most of us need saving from is the one between our ears. When you reach the end of this day, you may be tempted to measure yourself against perfection and find yourself wanting. Don't. Measure yourself against your last honest effort. Did you move the fulcrum of control a little closer to where it belongs? Did you let fewer impressions drive the car? Did you act less from superstition and more from stewardship? Then you are practicing philosophy, not admiring it. Practice builds character the way water shapes stone, imperceptibly to the impatient, with dignity to the patient. There is a moment in Marcus Aurelius where he reminds himself that whether the world is governed by gods or atoms, doing good is still possible. That's a lifetime's instruction in one sentence. Your hand does not need to be magic to keep a promise. It needs your mind to tell it what to do, and your will to keep it doing it when no one watches. Superstitions about anatomy are a romance we tell ourselves to avoid the harder romance of discipline. End this romance tonight. Start the better one tomorrow morning when you look at your hand and ask, not what it means, but what it's for. If this has steadied your thoughts, the most valuable thing you can do with that steadiness is to test it in the world. Try the 7-day experiment. See how often your mind sneaks superstitions into the driver's seat and how strong you feel when you gently move them back to the passenger side. And when you want to continue, the next chapter waits. we'll walk slowly through 3 practices that deepen everything we've begun. Preparing for adversity before it arrives, reviewing the day without brutality, and lifting your perspective when life narrows your vision, so that your judgments grow as precisely as your body cannot. Not as a program to complete, but as a way to live with your hands and your heart on the same team.